In the far north of Antarctica is one of the strangest places on the planet. It was once thought humans couldn't survive here. Now there's a town with a school and a post office. People from every corner of the world thrive in a place that's beyond extreme. They risk their lives to study wild animals and even go wild themselves. This is the side of Antarctica you rarely see. Along with pristine wilderness, it's grueling expeditions in mud and snow and canned spam for dinner. It's called King George Island, where an eclectic group of residents is grappling with big questions. From a Russian Orthodox priest trying to save our souls,
Человек, который любит Бога и любит ближнего, будет любить и окружающую природу.
to scientists trying to save the world.
The living organisms, they are so sensitive to climate changing. I would say they are like canaries in the mines that tells the warning to Earth.
Every summer, hundreds of scientists fly from the far south of Chile to the island's gravel runway. It's just a 2-hour flight once you're airborne, though Antarctic weather can delay planes for days. The journey is safe enough, though you land next to a transport plane that crashed on takeoff.
On behalf of Arabian staff, our captain and his entire crew, I want to say goodbye and we hope you have enjoyed your flight today.
Peter Convey of the British Antarctic Survey is something of a greying rock star of polar science. He's spending his 17th season on the ice.
It's an extremely good place for science, yes. I mean, it's sort of, everybody calls it natural laboratory, but there's all sorts of different disciplines that are very relevant to what the world needs to know. It's very good for applied research, it's very good for climate-related research. Obviously anything to do with ice, anything to do with marine biology. There's a major protein source in the Southern Ocean we've got to manage properly.
After penguins and seals, scientists have become the most prominent species. This is the very tip of the Antarctic Peninsula, where humans first came in 1819. Today, its proximity to South America has made it the epicentre of scientific research. There are bases from no less than 14 countries dotted around the island. But it's still a brutally hard place to live and work. These bases are actually run by the Chilean military to give scientists the brawn and muscle they need to do their jobs. This is how a typical day starts at the Chilean science station Escudero. How much further?
5 kilometers.
We're heading out with an archer, some biologists and a military commando in search of elephant seals.
Hey! Elephant.
Okay. Captain Luis Torres has one of the most dangerous jobs on the island.
Bueno, este es un trabajo maravilloso.
The biologists need to measure the level of toxins in the seal's blubber. The only way to do it is to fire arrows into the herd.
La flecha impacta el animal, saca una pequeña muestra, en este caso de grasa, también de pelo y piel, la cual uno debe recuperarla y entregársela a los científicos para que ellos puedan hacer el análisis de laboratorio.
The arrows cause more annoyance than pain, but these 3-ton mammals can be dangerous when grumpy. One slip and Captain Torres could lose a leg. This time he just gets wet. It takes a certain dedication to do this work and a certainty that it's important.
A new example, a very good example. Nice.
The leader of today's expedition, and the one giving him the orders, is Solange Carrasco, a Chilean biologist from the University of Concepcion.
Esta muestra, que es muestra de tejido cutáneo y de grasa, Sirve para ver los contaminantes que estos organismos acumulan. ¿Qué tipo de contaminantes serían? Serían pesticidas, conocidos como contaminantes orgánicos persistentes, y metales pesados. Eso.
Even Antarctica is suffering from the developed world's pollution. Airborne contaminants are working their way through the smallest fish to the largest mammals. But that's only one consequence of global pollution. Far more serious is climate change.
We're in the South Shetland Islands, that's at the north of the Antarctic Peninsula region. And the Antarctic Peninsula region, we know it as the Maritime Antarctic, over the last 50, 60 years has been one of the 3 fastest warming areas of the world.
Part of the reason is a simple knock-on effect. Warmer winters mean less ice. Less ice causes higher temperatures.
Now, one of the main reasons that the warming is so rapid here is, a consequence of warming here is that winter sea ice either doesn't form or forms less and melts earlier. So you have the sea, you have liquid sea close to the coast, and that has a buffering effect on temperature. And that means you get that contributes to the rapid warming that you get here.
The average annual temperature on the peninsula has risen 2.8 degrees in 50 years. That's the biggest rise in the southern hemisphere and a sign of what the future could hold.
It's like we have a very complicated system. We've pushed it beyond the bounds of what it's done naturally in the last at least several million years. We have essentially knocked the global climate system out of kilter. And I would say, rightly, we should be very scared about what's going to happen to humans.
Climate change is now a key focus for all the science stations here. Chile's Escudero base runs regular gatherings where scientists share their research. Peter Convey has to stay abreast of the findings. He's a climate change advisor to the main international body SCAR, the Scientific Committee on Antarctic Research.
Even if we stop now, even if we miraculously could sort of remove all the CO2 from the atmosphere and go back to square one, it's not automatic that the system would return to the original state. We've pushed it out of stability, and in many ways we don't know where it's going. If that's not a serious problem, I don't know what is.
If one place embodies the international concern, it's King George Island. The airport, run by the Chilean Air Force, is the logistical hub. Next to it is a small town for military officers and their families. 4 of the stations, from China, Chile, Russia and Uruguay, are in walking distance of the town. The South Korean base is just across the bay. We're staying at the Russian base Bellingshausen, named after the Russian explorer credited with discovering Antarctica. It's the only place on the island with spare rooms. With so many scientists in such close proximity, there's even something of an Antarctic social scene.
Prost! Salud!
Every week or so, the Chilean scientists at Escudero throw a party, and every nationality is invited.
The boat's just covered with some alcohol, I think of it.
The music's Latin, but half the visitors can be Poles, Koreans and Germans. Mari Rumler is a research student from the University of Vienna in Germany's east. She's doing a field stint at the Russian base studying penguins. She insists this is not a usual Antarctic night.
We have to work in the next morning, but everybody else stays here. I think it's not free to say next morning I come on.
You're German.
But we are always working, every minute, every day.
Salud, Prost! Next morning, the Germans are up early to take us to a penguin colony. Under their supervisor, Hans-Ulrich Peter, they're studying how rising temperatures are affecting the penguin population.
Yes, there is a big change in the penguin numbers, especially Adelie penguins.
The island's native penguins, Adelies, appear to be heading further south. That's because it's getting harder to find their main food source, krill. And that's because krill feed on organisms under sea ice.
It means less ice on winter, means less diatoms, less krill and less penguins.
But another group of penguins, gentoos, recognisable by their coloured beaks, appears to be adapting.
Gentoos hate ice. It means if there is less ice, it's an advantage.
The hard part is getting blood samples to work out exactly what the penguins are eating. This makes shooting darts into elephant seals look easy.
Yeah. Good.
The penguin's bite isn't the problem, it's their wings. They're pure muscle and bone and can pack a serious punch.
Gentoos are more strong.
Are you fond of penguins?
Does it look like this?
Yeah, interesting bird.
Interesting.
Yeah.
To lessen the stress on penguins, they're looking at alternative ways to monitor the diet. One clue is penguin poo. Known as guano, it changes colour depending on what they're eating. Red suggests krill. All this white suggests they're eating more fish. They're certainly eating lots of something. You can really smell them, can't you?
Yeah.
It's quite Humans weren't always so friendly to animals here, or even to each other. The first men who spent time in Antarctica came to this island for these, and they clubbed seals to death in their thousands. After the hunters came the flag planters, with Britain, Chile and Argentina each claiming sovereignty of the island and huge swathes of Antarctica. Well, that all changed in 1959, when 12 countries signed the Antarctic Treaty. It put their territorial claims on ice and preserved the continent for peaceful scientific research. It was one of the most astonishing acts of international cooperation in modern history. Today, the rivalry isn't over who owns Antarctica, it's who has the best science stations. And it's a constantly changing field. The Russian-based Bellingshausen was the pride of Soviet research when it was set up in 1968. Since the end of the Soviet Union, it's fallen on hard times. Bulat Mavludov is the resident glaciologist. The station has no ice vehicle, so he can walk for up to 3 hours across the island to measure the ice cap. The weather may look appalling, it doesn't bother Bulat.
Living here, it's good, it's enough good weather, it's not very bad. Sometimes rain, sometimes sun. But our meteorologists say by statistics that usually in a month, 22 days with clouds. But it's an interesting place.
He gets to spend time in places most people could only imagine. The rewards are greater than money, which is just as well as their budget's about to be cut again.
Maybe in future our country will have possibility to give more money for receive more scientific results.
But in the meantime, you're still working, still doing the job?
Yes, we will try.
While there's little funding for science, patriotic Russians have raised money for salvation. Just above Bellingshausen is the last thing you'd expect to find in Antarctica. This Orthodox church was built in Siberia in 2002 and transported log by log on a Russian icebreaker. There's even a full-time priest, Father Kirillov, who lives in a shed behind the church.
Которые в Москве воплотили в жизни храм в Антарктиде, православный храм в Антарктиде.
Это как сказка смотреть церковь в Антарктике.
Да, многие иностранцы приходят и говорят beautiful, very well, очень прекрасное место. Дерево, оно здесь в Антарктиде очень долго стоит, можно сказать, вечно. Распята Божий звездный при понтифике Пилате,
The one thing lacking is a congregation. 2 Russians from the base help him perform the liturgy. Few of the others ever come here.
Но церковь построить это быстро, а вот души воспитать в любви к Богу и к ближнему, это очень процесс очень долгий.
China has been quick to take Russia's place in Antarctic science. The Great Wall Station is just a kilometre up the road. It boasts some of the best facilities on the island, from comfortable 3-storey buildings housing cutting-edge laboratories to an indoor basketball court. This was China's first Antarctic base when it opened in 1985. China's now building its 5th. It's very much part of the international community here, the court a popular venue for friendly matches with Chilean soldiers. Ningshu is the station chief.
对对对，我们现在就当成是这个是的，非常像一个社区，你帮我，我帮你，大家在这里和平共处，大家都为了搞为了我们的科学研究啊，大家都在这里尽力的做。
But how altruistic is all this investment? China is a resource-hungry nation. For now, the Antarctic Treaty bans mineral exploitation, but in 2041 that moratorium is up for review. It's a sensitive issue. Are you looking at minerals here that China might be able to get after 2041?
我们现在没有在找矿产。
Right.
我们更多的是 找这里动物、生物。
Ningshu is quick to change the subject.
你这个看上去非常英俊，让人我很容易接受。
啊。
然后那个。
There's no doubting China's cooperation. Whenever a container comes to the Chilean bases, the Chinese bring down their heavy machinery to help unload it. After a month here as station chief, Marcelo Lepe is in awe at the assistance.
You don't need an agreement at a high level to ask to the Chinese for the crane to move your container. The Antarctic community is something very special that is happening. And I really believe that all feel under a different flag in this continent.
But he also believes it would take just one country to break ranks on the mining ban for everyone to join in.
And I am worried about that. It's enough. One country decide to exploit something and everybody came to exploit this resource. And this will be end probably of the Antarctic Treaty.
So far, the only commercial activity that's allowed here is tourism. Tour groups can fly down before joining cruise ships, but they can only stay a few hours or camp on the ice. There are no hotels in Antarctica.
Yeah, they only are allowed to put their feet in the land in a few places like this.
Yeah. And you get to do it all the time, every day.
Yeah? Yeah. I am a lucky guy. I am a lucky guy. And taking photographs. It's a dream. It's a dream. Yeah.
Luis Rossell is a diver and photographer for the Chilean Antarctic Institute in Uch.
This is all wild. Yeah. We maybe want to see some big mammals swimming between us or big whales.
He takes us out into the bay where the wind chill can drop the temperature from 0 to -10. But we're soon rewarded.
Well, we went to eat.
Oh my God.
Further out, we see for ourselves the effect of rising temperatures on glaciers. When people first started coming to Antarctica, this spot was encased in solid ice. But over the past 60 years, the glacier has receded by more than a kilometre. And that's the reality of global warming here. You can actually see it happening.
Glaciers are thinning and retreating very rapidly here. That is a direct consequence of the regional warming. The last few decades of warming are very exceptional compared to any natural variations over a multi-thousand-year timescale at least, if not a multi-hundred-thousand-year timescale.
The British Antarctic Survey says 87% of the peninsula's glaciers have been retreating. But that's minor compared to West Antarctica, where an ice sheet stretching thousands of kilometres is showing signs of disintegrating. The exact cause is unclear, but the effect on sea levels could be catastrophic.
If you look at glaciers in the entire region, the direct consequences of sea level rise, for instance, are likely to affect around about 1 billion people because they live within a small number of metres of sea level. And that's actually going to work in rich Western countries as well as poor countries that we have this nasty habit of ignoring or prioritising more lowly. So big American cities, how many big European cities or American cities are on the coast?
But for now, our problem is more immediate. It's the weather. We stop off at the South Korean base, expecting to hitch a ride back later. Within minutes, the wind picks up and it becomes too dangerous to cross. The station manager, Dr. In Young Ann, invites us to camp on the couches until the weather clears. She's used to being caught here by the elements.
Well, in some sense, I would say it is like a jail. Yeah.
Because you're trapped by the weather.
Yeah.
Yeah, so people can spend days stuck here, unable to go anywhere else in the island.
But of course, it depends on how you think this place is. It depends on your mind. You could be happy or you could be very depressed. Yeah.
Dr. Ann was something of an Antarctic pioneer.
Now you see many female scientists at this station. I would say about 1/3 are female. But back in the early 90s, I was the only female for the first 5 to 6 years. I was surrounded by 20, sometimes 40 male scientists.
Is it unusual for a woman to be running a base here?
Definitely unusual, I guess. Well, even in the whole world, I guess, yeah. I was the first Korean woman who came to Antarctica, and also the first female station leader in Asia. So I would say it is quite unusual.
The station, called King Sejong, is now perhaps the most comfortable on the island. Dr. Ann puts great stock on the welfare of her isolated staff. Along with heated toilet seats, there's an indoor golf range. There's even a hydroponic garden for fresh vegetables. The dining hall would get 4 stars. There's food in Antarctica. Even so, it does start to feel a bit like jail. Well, we came here for an afternoon and we've now been stuck here for 3 days by the weather and the clothes we came in. We need to get back across the bay to the Russian base Bellingshausen, and you can't even see it from here. The forecast is just terrible. So, starting to go a bit stir-crazy. Eventually, we make it back to the Russian base and its canned spam porridge. There are none of the comforts of the Korean or Chinese bases here, but there is one special luxury. Every Saturday, the Russians power up the diesel generator to heat a small sauna called a banya. It's not compulsory to use it, and you don't have to get the traditional beating of the birch branch.
Some great beer, see?
No. Stimulates the blood flow, apparently. But they'd think you were mad if you didn't. After the bunya, there's an ice-cold plunge pool to cool down. After 10 days in Antarctica, it was time to go home. But the fog rolled in again, and it was 3 days more before our plane could reach the islands. It's a place that only the most dedicated scientists would want to call home. But in a time of global warming, with a looming threat of mining, all of them hope it can be preserved.
I think it's our very sacred duty as a scientist to keep this environment moratorium forever.